Looks like we are live.
Indeed.
Hello. So, from my side, I'm just going to do a short opening.
Sure.
Welcome to what to me feels like the third season of the Modern Couples podcast. At the same time, I have changed the name from modern couples still exist, but this time I want to explore a little bit more the sovereign edge. And that is very purposefully chosen because when I founded Modern Couples, it was centered on exploring the modern zeitgeist of relationships. And I would say, like 8 years ago, I was coming from a very romanticized point of view, and the world has changed since then.
Mm.
And I do feel that we need to explore a little bit more our own sovereign edge individually and as a couple. And this summer, I am interviewing several experts today. I have one here with me. I will introduce you briefly in a minute. But yeah, this feels like the first episode of a new chapter of Modern Couples, the Sovereign Edge, and exploring what it means to be human in the age of AI and all the other crazy things that are happening in the world. So, with that, I would like to welcome you, Traver Boehm. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Yes, wonderful. You have your logo in the background. You have your own podcast, the Uncivilized podcast, and
Mhm.
actually, I came across your work around 2020, 2019, in a podcast when I was new to the world of polarity. And you were speaking about archetypes, the warrior, and
Mm.
what it means for the masculine to explore the dark side and really get into control of, the side that might be scary even to yourself. And I think it is one of the episodes I have shared the most frequent with my men in my coachings. So that is how long I follow your work. But I would be curious to hear who you are today and what are you currently building. So please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Traver Boehm, and as Marcella said, in 2020, if you see behind me the words uncivilized, I was deeply building a men's movement and was engaged in shifting the paradigm of masculinity away from the binary that I felt existed in the culture, which was either the 1950s Marlboro idea or all primal, all traditional, without feeling, without relationality, or what it felt like culturally was the collapsed version of the divine, the spiritual, the sensitive new age guy who wasn't in touch with the more structured side of himself. And so I was fully engaged deeply with men, with men's work, uh, helping men with their relationships, helping men with their alchemize their pain, helping men view sexuality and relationship a different way. And Marcella, that took me up until about a year and a half ago. And around that time, some interesting shifts started happening in my own life. Uh, Two very close family members of mine, both men, died. One committed suicide, the other just passed from old age. It was my father. And there's an initiation that happens with men when our fathers die. It's undeniable. I'm sure there's another initiation when my mother passes, but for my father, I can tell you that maybe 3 or 4 days after he passed, something started to reorganize itself in me. And it wasn't just grief. I could feel the grief, but then I could feel that there was a layer underneath it of very deep change. And the idea of just working with men or working with men in the capacity that I had, it felt like the volume on that got dialed back 2 or 3 degrees, if that makes sense. And I still wanted to do it. It was still in my heart. I was still passionate about it, but something underneath it had slowly started to awaken. And I didn't know what it was. And it was very difficult and tumultuous to say, like, wait a minute, I built a brand, I have a team, I have a podcast, I have a book, I have clothing, I have workshops, I have courses. This is my life. What's this thing that's starting to come up underneath it? And that was maybe a year before I went into a very unique and very intense spiritual initiation, which was last summer in Europe. I spent 7 weeks in a dark retreat. And
Mm.
that is a long time. And it took that length of time to drop me down and drop me down and drop me down and drop me down to where I had access to the thing that was kind of bubbling up. And that was a co-ed piece around initiating people or helping people live from a more soulful place or a more soul-led life. So men's work was still there. And the early access of men's work of, hey, you need these basic things was still something I wanted to teach about, but there was more. And it wasn't just you need goals, you need missions, you need a purpose, you need to get sober, you need to get off porn, you need to start working out. Like, that's great. But there was this deeper calling of, and who are you underneath all of that? And why are you here underneath all of that? And that was it was for men and women. And so in the last year, I've started introducing this concept called Olsly, which is a word that came to me in the dark, which I didn't know it. I can share a whole story around it if you'd like, but it stands for one life, a unified, aligned, integrous life, led by the soul, soul led, that you go all in on. So OLSLAI. And that word just like hit me. And then the language around it came. And so that's been an exploration for me of how do I live it first. In the past year, I've watched coming out of the dark, my own life reorganize itself, reorient itself, crash, come back, all kinds of tumultuous reinvention and reorganization to align with the idea that came into me a year ago in the dark. So I feel like I'm over answering your question, but I'm a teacher, I'm a speaker, I'm a writer, and talking about this and sharing these ideas and being a seeker myself is my current life's path.
Mm. Thank you for sharing all of these little nuggets. So I do want to hear what the story behind the Osley.
Sure, sure.
Before that, the subject of grief has been very present these days. So
Yeah.
I just briefly want to touch upon that because I do. I mean, I think that's a no-brainer that we are in a society where grief and suffering and all of that is pushed away largely, and um, I do feel that when someone, especially like our father, mother, or grandparents also like pass, it can be very challenging because we have little to no practice to be with grief, and then it's really the person who nurtured us or who we looked up to. Um, I I wonder because I have had my process this winter around the matriarchs of my family dying, and I'm talking about the grandmothers. Um, and it was not so much a realization around, oh, my grandmothers are old, they are dying, this is sad. It was really a grief around, this is the eldest. I know this is the eldest in our entire lineage alive right now. What is the wisdom? What is there still to learn? What is there? How is it going to be afterwards? And what can I do? What can we do so that she knows that the lineage continues, that we are safe? So I do feel there's a lot around, the goodbyes or the grieving of our parents and grandparents, and it goes beyond just sadness or this is a sad thing. It's really an initiation, and it's almost like, yeah, now here you are, son, you are soon going to be the oldest of this lineage. Are you ready for it?
It is a deep archetypal ache, is the best way I can describe it using language. That I was sad and cried and had acute emotions when my father passed. but there were layers underneath it of both calm and groundedness and access to depth that this untouchable or barely touchable ache gave me a doorway into, which is I'm not crying, I'm not acutely emoting, but there's something very different about life now. I cannot pick up the phone and call him ever again. Saying the man who took his own life was my cousin, and he was like a brother to me. And I will never have another experience. He is baked into all of the experiences of the first 45 years of my life. And there's intellectually I understand this is what happened, this is what was going through, but this is grief does not care about from here up.
Mhm.
I would venture to say in the beginning it's from here, it's your heart. But then it drops down to a depth, into your gut, into the core of you, into the bones of you, into the fiber of your DNA, that changes. And it is, you use the word that is so profound here, which is an initiation. It means that you can never go back to the way things were, ever,
Mhm.
no matter what. You can dream about it, you can fantasize about it, you can look at pictures, but you can never go back to pre-initiation. And there is a grief in that. There is a quiet, subtle sadness on one side of that. There's also a maturation on the other side of that. Of, okay, this is the natural process. We understand this. We don't talk about it here in the West. We don't speak about it. But somewhere deep in our bones, in and thousands of generations of people, we know this is how it goes. This is inevitable. This is life. It's so much bigger and bigger than we are, is simply the way I'll put it. And so I agree with you. It is a topic that we need to be speaking about. I started Uncivilized because I said a decade ago, I look at the male landscape and what I see is an epidemic of unexpressed grief in men, that we have no permission and no skill to emote. We literally just get told, well, man up, put it to the side. You got to keep going. Now, I would say 10 years later, there is an epidemic of unexpressed grief in all humans.
All.
All. We have not grieved what we lost for COVID.
Mhm.
We have not grieved the wars that followed COVID. We have not grieved the truth of the Epstein list. We have not grieved that this is our culture, that this is what we've normalized. That if people actually stopped and said, wait a minute, this is reality, that it would crush them. It would crush most of us, right?
I fully agree. Like, especially in 2026, the pace has picked up so much, um, that, yeah, the events as they are happening, if we fully let them in, it's really difficult to see hope, or it's really difficult to um, hold the pain and the suffering. And it's an interesting one. I would like to explore with you a little bit more, especially the burden or the world for the masculine in this time and age. But
Mm.
let's say I started in the beginning saying, look, modern couples was founded, or my initial idea was to look at relationships in this modern day and age where we have incredible opportunities to create a love that never existed on planet Earth. We are this very privileged group of people that even gets to talk about it, that even gets to dream about it, especially, unfortunately, as women,
Mm.
me speaking from that perspective, right? But the majority of women on planet Earth is not in a healthy, happy relationship, and is not able to say no to it. And so from that place, this is a very privileged, um, niche market almost. And like, I wanted to encourage everyone to not let this opportunity slip. And like, here are tools that your parents probably didn't teach you. And And next to that, now here we are a few years later, and while all of that is true, security and safety has come closer to us again. Like, where am I safe? What
Mhm.
skills do we need for the future? It's not at all anymore like life is not for granted, or the abundance is no longer granted. That doesn't mean that the love has to shrink. Like, these opportunities are still there for a niche, but here we are. Our nervous systems are, as exactly as you say, overstimulated from all these years. We lack time to grieve or to process anything, and on top of that, we have AI that is trying to get into our attachment styles and seducing us into worlds that our brains cannot yet even deal with. We have the pocket therapist with AI. We have um, war around the world, and then there is, and I think that was not as clear 10 years ago. This epidemic, it's called, right, around the I think it's called lost boys, but also really the grief that only increased in the masculine. It feels. And right now, in these past 2 months, there was so much light being shined, I think, being shined on, if that's the right grammar, on, let's say, the shadow, the darkness that seems to be bigger than ever before. And not that it didn't exist before, but now it's almost like, since we are spiraling each other up, we are supporting each other on certain abuse, violence, and sexual um yeah, violence. It's just heartbreaking. And I would like to hear from you the male perspective, because really I am at the moment, and this is my theme for the summer, questioning, like, how can I still work with men
Mm.
while all these things come to light? And I'm looking for solutions, right? Because we know the feminine loves the masculine. We want to heal them. We want to save them. All of that. um, so the answer is not to say, no, go away. But yeah, that is, I think, my overarching question of, how do we still work with men? And you also work with men. But what have you noticed in the last years that is really in men's hearts, that is moving them, the challenges that we face?
It's a big set of questions,
Yeah.
right? I know the vast majority of men I know are as outraged about what's happening as the women in our lives, but we feel it differently. You all feel it, I believe, I'm not a woman, viscerally. Like, when this all comes out, it's one more hit against thousands of personal experiences and friends' experiences and loved ones' experiences. Like, it's more common than not. And my sense with a lot of men is, I there's nothing I can do about it. If I'm not part of the problem, there's nothing I can do about it. And I've had to sit with that and had to get down to the micro and speak to men and say, but there is something you can do about it. Just not being predatory, just not being shadow and slippery and um, evil isn't enough. You actually are being called into the solution. But then the question is begged of, well, what is the solution? Right? One of the more confused pieces I put out into the world a couple months ago on social media was, I'm not surprised about the Epstein list. I remember saying that and saying, there's an Epstein list in your neighborhood. We have a law here called Megan's Law, which means all registered sex offenders have to be public, and you can go to a website and look, and you can see that there's 5 guys on your street, and you can see their charges. You can see what the street over has. You can see what the neighborhood has. So there's an Epstein list in your church. How many of the pastors have just been moved from place to place to place and no one's really said anything, right? There's an Epstein list in your company. How many guys have just been quietly removed by HR, or they haven't been because they're really good producers? So the victims have been quietly removed for being troublemakers or speaking out. So there's an Epstein list everywhere. So what do we do? I just got chills. What do we do is, gentlemen, we start working on the community level. We go, beautiful. I'm going to join a men's group. And I know I'm not promoting it because that's what I do. But if men can't get in the same room and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing, what are you guys up to? Then we're never going to solve the problem. If a man can't show up and say, hey, I'm drinking too much and I'm not really sure why, but I'm not proud of it, then have 8 other guys go, beautiful, I've been where you are. Talk to me about what's underneath that. Oh, there's stress at home. There's stress with your wife. There's stress at work. Amazing. Let's address the stress. Oh, your father just died and you have no one that you can talk to about it. Beautiful. Tell us. Share with the group. Clear your heart. Clear what's inside of you. This is the responsibility. I know you've asked the question of how do women work with men? Bless you for the question,
Mhm.
but it's not your job anymore. It's our job to go, hey, beautiful. Thank you. Appreciate you. We have 80% of the work to do ourselves now. But here's the societal conundrum. We need the space to do it. We need the permission to do it. And we as a society need to stop shaming men for actually doing the very work that they want and are being asked to do. That's where this gets confusing, right? So we'll tell men, we want you to go to therapy. I've trained a number of therapists. I've worked with a number of therapists on how to work with men. A lot of them, I would say, you have no business working with men. You should not work with men. You are harmful to men. Yet we will tell men, go to therapy, go to therapy, go to therapy. A large number, something like 80% of men who commit suicide have been to therapy in the last 6 months. So we have to change the entire structure of all of this. First, I'll say we as men need to show up to each other differently, very differently. Why is it that we create connection over alcohol, over violence, over drugs, over lying or bragging about sex? Why is that our connection point? Why isn't it something more heartfelt and heart led? I don't drink, so I don't hang out with people who drink. It surprises me when I forget. I haven't had a drink in 11 years, and I'm not an alcoholic. I just chose years ago. I don't want this in my life. So when people are like, hey, a bunch of us are going to go out and get shit faced tonight, I'm like, why don't you just not do that? Why don't you go out and get sandwiches and then talk about what's real in your life? So I don't want to be going too far afield here, Marcella, but men need to actually look at the world and say, I want to live in a different one. Now, I can't go after Donald Trump. I can't go after the Department of Justice. I can't take down Bill Gates. I can't take down anybody on the Epstein list, but I can get 5 guys in my neighborhood together. And once a month, we can sit in my garage and we can say, hey, what's really going on with you? This place is safe. We're good here. That right there, again, it's part of what I'm trying to do is put a men's group in every major city in the world so that when guys have issues, which we do, as all humans do, they have somewhere that they can go. There's a really interesting case that I just saw, Marcel. I'm curious your take on this too. I don't like the guy who said this. He was a therapist on TikTok, very famous therapist. Jeff, do you remember him? Therapy with Jeff, I think. Yeah, and he had this great idea. How come we don't have a call line where a man can say, "Hey, I'm struggling with really bad sexual urges. I think I'm going to do something violent. Can you help me?" Which I think is a great idea. That man was attacked mostly by women who said, why aren't you centering the victims? Why aren't you talking about the victims? He said, I'm trying to prevent the victims.
Mhm.
My very first boss is a guy named Gavin DeBecker. Have you ever read The Gift of Fear?
No, I haven't.
I think it was on the New York Times bestseller for like 2 years. He's a very, very, very famous author. And his point was Why don't we have homicide prevention hotlines? We have suicide prevention hotlines. So I can call and say, hey, I'm going to kill myself. People are like, whoa, 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 let's help you out. But if I call and say, hey, I think I'm going to kill my neighbor, no one's like, well, cool. Well, let's help you out. So
Mhm.
again, we have to really reorient and be willing to let go of some of our belief systems here before we actually get the change that we say we want. So it starts with men. I want to answer your direct question. It starts with men, and we need to really, really look at our shadow. And I'd say what's profound and what is most harmful right now is we really need to look at our sexual shadow. We could take the entire male population and say, awesome. For the next month, we're all deep diving in our sexual shadow. By the way, you're not allowed to look at porn during this. You're not allowed to have sex during this. You certainly can't be on like yoga pages on Instagram or whatever else is basically pseudo porn.
Mm.
What are you doing with sex? Where are you hiding in sex? Where are you lying in sex? How are you using sex as a stress reliever and a number rather than a connection experience? What are your violent fantasies? What are your fantasies, period? What's underneath them? Do you really want to live that thing out, or are you trying to get access to something you can't reach in a very unskillful way? These are not common conversations among men.
Mhm.
Instead, we're getting drunk and watching football, which I have nothing against football and if or getting drunk for that matter fully, but like let that be the 5% of the conversation. And the other 95% is, oh, you're outraged about the Epstein list? Beautiful. Me too. Can I see your internet history? Oh, I can't. Okay, so you have your own work to do before you point fingers at the higher ups in society because you're doing the same thing just on a lesser level. Does this make sense or am I rambling now?
No, no, it makes complete sense, and I'm really on an explorative quest here for the summer because I work with couples, and in that, there is very often a man involved, um, and I'm really at the moment like thinking, noticing, oh, there is my own inner work right now happening, and when you had your goosebump moment, one of the reasons why I really want to get um, men to, well, why I really want to hear from men, but also help men to see that this is really their topic to explore and take over. Because what you say, as in, this is a man's topic, let's say this is not the common response towards what is happening, right? So, um, when when we had in Germany, we had a case also about digital violence at home. It was a husband who, so the story goes, and it's not yet proven, but it doesn't really matter for this case because it's an example for many of the things that happen in that way, right? So a husband who created deepfake porn over 10 years of his wife, and that was the moment when for me it was like, okay, I was so not just triggered, but it really hit my heart. Exactly as you say, it's like a visceral experience of like, look, here I am vouching for love, working with couples, for couples. Um, like if I get it, like not all of us can be involved with all the wars and politics in the world, but this is personal and this is
Mhm.
on you, and you are actually able to do something about it.
Right.
And if we cannot trust or build trust or work on relationships on that level, if you are not willing to even look at that and call for help or do something about it or have that level of orientation in your life, like where do we even start? Because
Mm,
me as your coach or therapist working on the couple and the relationship, I also need to trust to a certain degree and level that you mean well.
mhm,
And that was really a moment when I was like, oh, how do I make sure that, and in this case, it is very often more so the men,
mhm,
that we are working towards a shared vision, and I'm not just keeping a woman in an unhealthy relationship. Um, but what happened when this case came public, I called many of my male coach, men coach, male friends, and said, "What are you doing with your men?
Mm,
you have influence over men. What are you doing?
mm,
And let's say they hadn't even heard about the case. They hadn't even, seen that. It's not in their algorithm. It's not in their feed. So
mm,
I sent a lot of reels or a lot of articles and,
mhm,
okay, so it picked up. And then the conversation was like, I don't know. It's hard to talk about it. And let's say it took a month of work, my care work
mhm,
to convince male men coaches that this is a topic that they should take on and that they need to do the inner work on fast, because what is happening, and this was the goosebump moment, um, this is no longer a right wrong debate, and it's not about whether a judge calls someone guilty or not. It is not. What is happening right now in brains of women that have a choice is they walk on the street, uh, they go to the supermarket, they see men in the aisle, and they're like, perpetrator, perpetrator, you have porn, you are probably abusing someone. It's like, prove to me that you are worthy, or else I'm just gonna, make a big circle around you. Like,
mhm,
you need to prove that. Women are deleting their profiles on dating apps. Women are, that's the first, like, we always needed to take care of, is this a sketchy area or not? But let's say the degree where it goes towards, I can go to a restaurant and a bar, and all of a sudden I'm like, you know, who are you mixing the drinks? And I don't fear that there will be something in the drink, but I'm like, you might as well be porn addicted and, like, prove to me otherwise, because the numbers are so high, so freaking high.
mhm,
Uh, and that is the part where it's nice if you are in a man's circle, but if you don't understand that women are shifting gears and are literally asking you to prove your worth, and it's like a lose-lose game that we are heading towards, in regards to ever trusting anyone. And this is where I really feel, man, like, take this on. Like, you're not just fighting for this one case and figuring out who was right and who was wrong, but the implications go way beyond that. And you will have the consequences of that, because women will not trust you. And by showing your phone, it will not be enough anymore. It's almost like, yeah, you can propose to me, and still, I don't know if I'm going to be safe 5 years from now.
mhm.
Um, and that's really a scary part of where I really want to see, okay, what do we do about it, and how do we activate man's circle to really see, yeah, like, figure out your own things, but also see why you really want to almost like become the feminist, why you really want to fight for these women, because women need to see you fight for them and for justice and for a change there. Yeah,
Yeah, of
absolutely nothing happens. Women are filled with rage right now, right? Like, nothing is happening.
course.
And still, we are still wanting to be with men and loving men. But yeah, it's very, things are changing, shifting and changing. Tell me how that was.
It is a very difficult time, and I believe you and understand. And even though I'm a ardent and and fierce promoter and proponent of men, I also go, "Yeah, I get it. I'm thinking the same damn thing." Right? When these cases break and it's, oh, the Giselle I remember the Giselle Pelicot case. I was just like, "How is this possible? Where in your brain, like, how did we get here?"
Yeah,
And more so for men, how did we get to a place where we didn't go, "That's it. None of us are going to work tomorrow. Everybody's staying home until we as a group figure this out." Like, big team meeting. Nope, no one's doing anything. No football this year, no cigarettes, no alcohol sales. We are just locking in and going, I won't live in a society where a married man brings in, what, 50 other men to rape his wife, and there's a Telegram group around it, and no one was like, "Hey, this isn't okay." That it literally then perpetuated, and we can say, "Oh, that's one isolated case." It's not one fucking isolated case. It's the one that got caught. And not only is it the one that got caught, it's the one that got caught and then got in the media. How many times is this and other atrocities and other, um, perpetrations happening where it's just part of the gig. So I understand the collective feminine's withdrawal and distrust. I do. Even as someone who is in the trenches with men and will say, oh, I've sat in circles with enough men who have been raped, who have been abused, who have been molested, who've watched stepfathers beat the shit out of their mothers, have been abused by their mothers, have been abused by their sisters. Just the amount of abuse. But this is the first time they're talking about it.
Yeah.
And so that's also a piece that needs to come forward. There
Yeah.
has to be space and skill and room for men to step forward and say, I have this thing I can't control in me. By the way, this is also what happened to me. Because we're a society saying, change this, change this, change this. But we're not quite ready to say, and now tell us what happened to you. Oh, shit. I had no idea that was even possible or that you were carrying that. Or you grew up with movies and TV and messaging saying, you shouldn't talk about that. Don't be a baby. Don't be a wimp. Don't be weak. You got to man up. Or you did share it with a partner at some point and then they left you for not being a man. All of these ways that we still as a society, I'm not assigning an excuse here by any means, still tell men your emotional pain and physical pain isn't valid. And then we look at the outcropping and go, wait, we just got to stop that. We want to stop the branch without the root. But again, Marcel, my point to men is do this for you. Do it for your brother. Be your brother's keeper. Right? Get involved with the men in your life and go, hey, I want to know you. I want to know you at a depth that maybe other men don't. I want to be known at a depth that other men don't know me. We have to collectively come together and start sharing and start speaking and start being part of the actual solution. Right? And say, cool, I don't care what the media says about what being a man is. I don't give a fuck. I do not care. I don't care what most people say about it. I know what I feel about it and the work I do with men and what that shows me and tells me. And I see the result from that. And it is deeply relational. It is deeply connected. It is deeply intimate. It is deeply emotional. Are there times when it's really physically tough? Like, cool, we'll do 1,000 push-ups in a month. Great. But has that taken a man from being a perpetrator to not being a perpetrator? Absolutely not. It's made his shoulders a little bit bigger and given him some discipline, which is fantastic. But it's not so we can sit across from each other and say, holy shit, I can feel the pain in you, brother. I
Mhm.
feel it. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay in relationship with you as you tell me about this and afterwards too, so that you get one rep in your head of sharing something hard and not being abandoned after. But we'll rewrite that story that has you acting out in all of these horrible ways or has you ignoring horrible things so that it doesn't make you feel the shit that you don't know how to feel or don't have the capacity to feel. That makes
Mhm.
sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
You asked me about the phone line or hotlines,
Yeah.
and maybe we have a few more of these in Europe actually or in Germany, but generally, I mean, I would say any place where people can safely express themselves is better than not expressing themselves. Now, on the other side, the person receiving it, yeah, that is a burden to receive these things, and
Yeah.
um, it's a skill to learn. It also, these people that have to watch a child porn every day in the, due to their profession, that is not a pretty job. That is, where do you place that in your body, heart, and mind? It's like, it's tough. So, um, but would it be beneficial for the person that is planning on doing something? I would absolutely agree. Yes, that is where they can receive guidance. And I do think, like, let's say AI has become the number one pocket therapist, or the number one use case um, for humans. There is something about that I find very interesting, and I'm curious how and when science will do more analysis on that. Maybe they're already on it, but let's say the questions and things that we share with AI because we feel it is safe. I think it's going to open a new depth of understanding the human psyche and
Mm.
also, classifying it to certain age groups and genders. If, you know, someone looks at that from that perspective, and I mean, data is sold anyways, but beforehand, we had our journal maybe, and we had maybe a therapist, but even going to therapy, many people feel there is still performance, and still hold back. And no, you don't share all your thoughts with your partners at all times, but
Mm.
there is a level where people share more, um, and let's say unfiltered with AI, that I feel there's also the potential of understanding a shadow that has not yet been understood so well. Now, I have not yet I wouldn't be able to tell or say if AI is a great help in these moments or not. We
Mhm.
have several cases that are taken to court that prove that AI has not been a great supporter in these moments.
Sure.
Um, but still, it points towards, oh, there's also an opportunity of understanding something while it's also being used for terrible things that are causing the problems that we are talking about. So,
Yeah.
yeah, talking and healing and understanding. I would like to shift a bit from we have opened the shadow door big time,
Yeah.
and I'm a strong believer in yin and yang in that regards. But it's not that violence wasn't there beforehand, but it has grown to the
Mm.
best of my understanding, grown. So also, let's explore the light, because sex is oftentimes just understood as well, it's censored to begin with, and then it's used in shameful ways. And we have talked about the darkness, but I know you also explore, so to say, the safe spaces of intimacy, sexuality, and I listened to one of your episodes. I think you introduced the uncivilized bedroom. Was it?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
I wanna explore that side a bit, because I am a strong believer that um, sexuality is like it's so potent, so sacred, that I don't know who came up with like shadowing it in a way where we are using it right now, but it has
Mm.
greatest potential for healing and for giving us what we really desire and helping us be a better human in this world. But can you take us a bit to your understanding of sexuality and what is possible in a world where you live a healthy version of sexuality?
It's a big question. Uh, I think it is the archetypal of our deepest and truest expression, and our soul's deepest and truest expression. That is the doorway through which our soul can express itself, is our sexuality. Now, most people hearing that may just go like, "Oh, come on. It's fun. It's procreation. It's how we reproduce." Beautiful. That's one aspect of it. But it's the very, very tip of the iceberg. So the way I look at it is I want my sex life to express who I am at the deepest level across the entire spectrum. So all of the shadowy parts of me, if I am in a consensual experience, which I will be every single time, that has been well articulated and well talked about and then produced, I then get to express both that part and the deepest love, the deepest sacredness, the deepest spiritual connection, all intermixed in the same experience. And I get to do that with someone who's also sharing herself with me in the exact same way. Of these are the parts of myself that I haven't been able to be in the world, whether they're sexual or otherwise. I was never allowed to be angry. I was never allowed to be loud. I was never allowed to be confident. Beautiful. Let's see if we can create some angry, loud, confident sex. Why not? It's just the two of us. We can do whatever we want in this entire paradigm. Now, say we get to do that. This person, just like I talked about the man who said, I've never said this out loud. And I go, cool, we're going to stay in relationship with you as you share yourself in this way. He then gets to leave that situation with a repetition under his belt that, wow, I get to share what's true and I stay in relationship. That's crazy. I didn't think that was possible. How healing, how amazing. Now we take that same dynamic, but we add in the depth of vulnerability and the depth of connection and the juice, whatever we want to call it, the intensity and the potency of sexual energy. And we have on our hands what I think is the single most powerful set of healing, opening, expanding, all of the above possibilities. And let's role play out the exact same dynamic. This person, my partner, gets to go to her the depth of her vulnerability and say, "This is the one thing I've always wanted to express about myself, sexually and otherwise." I go, "Beautiful. I have this whole thing too. I want to. This is part of me that I don't often get to be in the world, and we get to play this out and experience this with each other." And there's a whole dynamic that takes place creatively, artistically, physically, primally, aggressively, caringly, tenderly, intimately, all the things. And then afterwards, we then get to come back together in a unsexual way, in a relational way. So we've had this arc of experience of kind of like the setup, the conversation, the how do you want this to be? Let's make a little experiment. You get to do this, I get to do this. And then the experience. And then now here's the relational aspect. I'm going to stay with you as your nervous system comes back into its calm. You're going to stay with me as we turn back into our regular selves, let's call us. And again, that's one rep. Now imagine if that is your regular sexual experience, where it's gone so beyond friction, it's gone so beyond the physical. Yes, there's a physical component to it, or perhaps there's a physical component to it. But what has gotten called into that experience too? Generational past, family lineage, archetypes, creativity, playfulness, pain, pleasure, all of the elements that could possibly be put into an experience. There's like this rich buffet of possibilities as opposed to like friction. I'm thinking about porn. She's thinking about the book she read the day before on that was smutty. Our genitals are kind of touching until it's like, "Are you good? I'm good. Okay, cool. I'm just gonna go in the other room or fall asleep or whatnot." I mean, if it's even that connected, right? Now I get that that's not everybody's but a lot of people are leaving the sexual arena because that is their experience. And so the reason I created the uncivilized bedroom was just to present a different possibility. I said, this is how I engage with sex. I believe that until you're willing to look at the dark erotic, the parts of yourself that you're like, it's not just a physical thing. Like, it's not just getting my toes sucked on is embarrassing, or like, I don't really want to ask for that. But until I'm willing to say, I want to be dominant with you, I want to take you places you can't go before, you haven't been before. Or someone saying, I want to surrender completely and allow myself to be in the hands of somebody else. When you can play in that zone safely and consensually, let me say it this way, Marcel, until you can play in that zone consensually and safely, you will not know freedom. There will always be a part of yourself that's either hidden and tucked away, like, or has been yet unexplored. So the tagline, if it's not even a tagline, I was saying to this group of people when I was teaching this is, I want your deepest fantasies to be, if they want to come out of the fantasy realm, because they don't have to. There's certain things you're like, I just want to fantasize about that, but I don't really want to have, sex with 20 women in Madison Square Garden while Led Zeppelin plays and fireworks go off. That's just like a cool, I think that would be a lot of work. But if I want to take something from the fantasy realm into the real realm, why can't that happen all the time? Imagine your life if your sex life is literally your fantasy 90% of the time. Think of how the world would operate very differently. I think
I
we're going to
have
get rid of some lists. We're going to get rid of people abusing their partners. We're going to get rid of people drugging their partners. We're going to get people who actually, because the process, and then I'd love to hear your take on it, is first, I have to know myself. I have to know my desires. I have to know my shadow. I have to know my light. I have to know my body. I have to know my physicality. I have to know my psychology. I have to know my spirituality. I have to know my heart. Then I can come to you and say, please show me the same before we even take a stitch of clothing off. That's what's required to engage in this way. Then there's the relational aspect. Can I hold your fantasy? Can I hold you through the emotional arc of an entire process like that? What happens if something goes askew? Can I hold you through that? What happens when big emotion comes up? Because big emotion comes up in this kind of engagement on both sides. Can I hold myself? Can you hold me? If I'm having an emotional or spiritual experience, like the level of intimacy and connection it's exponentiated. That's why I feel like I'm on a bedroom soapbox, but that's my idea. Yeah.
But you get excited about it when you hear it, like, how can anybody not want this? Why would you trade this other thing and not use this lifetime for that thing? It's like,
Right. Or I can
how?
sit here with my pants at my ankles, jerking off, watching people fuck on my computer screen, and then go get depressed afterwards. No, no way. No way. Gone. Gone.
Yeah, yeah. And I do think, like, since you cannot openly talk about these things without the algorithm shushing you or being censored, but also because it's hard to see this. I mean, at the moment, there's also a lot of conversation about role models and the lack of role models, which is very real. But it's like, where do we have the role models in all these areas, right? Like,
Mhm.
it is its own area to learn about sexuality, and it starts with yourself. For me, like back then, going to couples therapy, like I had this big aha moment where I was like, wait, like it's not always 50-50, and sometimes I am really the mess and I'm taking it out in the relationship and vice versa. But really, like, my personal development is my responsibility, and it doesn't make sense to me that couples therapy is always 50-50 and always,
Mhm.
like, if you start, and I'm in that process at the moment, if you start looking at some of the concepts that are being taught around couples therapy, like, there is so much of patriarchy and misogyny written
Mhm.
in there, in the assumption of 50-50. It doesn't even start 50-50 to begin with. And so,
Mhm.
for me, modern couples is built on the pillar of personal development and then relational foundations, and then we thrive together. But it's like there is a lot of work to be done, exactly as you described, individually. So, and then having the vision, the idea, what is possible in the bedroom. It's like, wow. And I'm just thinking of, like, what you describe and also what I am aiming for. Like, this is probably less than the 1%. Like, it's like, the ability to even conceptualize this, I feel like this is less than the 1% who
Mhm.
then also, because there's a dependency, it's like you might want this, but then you have done all the work and you just don't meet the other person who meets you there, right?
Right.
There there's definitely this momentum where it's also grief with,
Mhm.
the possibility that you might just not meet that person to go to these places because it is an area to explore together. And
Yeah.
um, I think it's well worth trying to go there and to get there, and it starts with the self. Um, maybe you can. I have like just two, three shorter questions if I
Sure.
stay.
Please. Please.
In all of this, where are you at when you hear the word feminism? What does it mean to you?
It's an interesting word for me because I grew up with a very feminist mother and two very feminist older sisters. And my view of it growing up was people who hated men, despite being dependent on them.
Mm,
So I've had to disentangle and untangle from that word and separate my own upbringing from it. Of I wasn't loved or I was loved, but like liked or appreciated simply by being a man and in my own home.
mm,
And yet I look at the world and say, I live in the US, where there's equality on levels that 90% of the world has no concept of. And I look at places where women can't have their faces uncovered, where women can be beaten legally. Like it's not even an issue. I look at cases, there was just a case recently, I think it was in the UK or Ireland, where I believe teenage boys raped a girl and filmed it. They filmed it. And the judge was like, they were
But
they,
oh,
they were good kids up until that moment, and they've been really good in prison. So, like, let's kick them out. And so, to me, I understand the necessity for it, and I don't believe that we have gotten anywhere close to equality. And so, uh, I support it.
mhm, mhm,
And my work is up until this point, honestly, Marcella, was beautiful. And I'm going this way and working with men
mhm,
in the trenches. And I'm awesome. This is how I show up in that work. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. I will say I think I was raised in the same time, so it's not like that was a sexy word or a sexy label, and it was very clearly that. And let's say the last years just show how women's rights are being removed also in the US, right? And I was born in a time when generally we were granted more than less. So
Mm.
I do feel that also there, like we inviting in that our consciousness shifts towards like feminists have been saying that it's not women against men and that we all benefit from it. And I'm like, okay, how can we get back to, oh, we are actually doing this for better relationships and we are actually doing this also for men.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, how can we get that back into all our understanding? But yes, I guess also feminism goes through waves. Um, in you briefly touched upon the root cause of, what causes this even in men psyche,
Mm.
or where do these desires come from? I've heard an interesting theory around circumcision being the root cause to all evil. What's your take on that?
Mm. I am highly uneducated in that. I get it. I don't think I buy it. I think it's a bit more complex than that, because then we would look at, is there violence, and has there been violence perpetrated by, has there been sexual violence perpetrated by men in cultures where circumcision was uncommon or not happening? And I would say male dominance, violence, toxicity, atrocities predate circumcision or live outside of communities that are circumcised. I mean, full disclosure, I'm circumcised, an American male, and I'm not violent, and I'm not sexually aggressive, and I'm not toxic. And I didn't have to go through a period of being so just because I didn't have foreskin. So I think that's
Mm,
a bit of a bypass.
mhm,
Here's what we don't want to talk about. M- Men are primarily bigger, faster, and stronger and more aggressive than most of the planet. So until that's a baseline. That is just a true fact, even in 2026. It is a baseline fact. It's a biological fact. So until we raise our consciousness as a group to beat that or to go against that, we will continue to have the default setting be true, right? Men can physically dominate, overpower, and hurt anyone or most people who are smaller and physically weaker than we are. I'm sorry, that's anyone who's not an older brother or an older I grew up with two older sisters. I learned really fast, and girls develop before boys. So when I was 11, I was this big and that skinny, and my two older sisters looked like they were 30. And so I just got pounded by and then all of a sudden at like 16, it was like, "Oh, guess what? Guess who's now gonna be bigger, stronger, faster, and more aggressive for the rest of your lives?" That shit
mhm,
stops. But most of the planet is walking around with some kind of deep primal understanding going, if I really want this, I can do it. And the only thing that's gonna stop me is my own morality or my own consciousness. That's where we have to start hitting men, right? Look at cultures where there is morality and there is consciousness, like real morality and real consciousness. And then look at what happens when that disappears because we have a calamity, we have a natural disaster, we have a war, we have substance abuse. The physicality actually comes back to the surface and it's like, well, now it's just the biggest, stronger, faster wins and dominates. And we don't like to say that. We don't like to remember that. But it's very, very true.
Mhm. Mm.
It's the double-edged sword, right, Marcel, of men, right? I remember I was dating a woman a couple years ago, and she said, "I've never felt safer walking the streets than when I walk the streets with you." I'm an ex-bodyguard. I'm an ex-professional fighter. I'm 195 pounds. I'm I'm skilled and trained and fast. And then one time, she was like, I wanna play a game with you. How quickly could you get me in a position where you could physically kill me?" And I was like, under 3 seconds. She's like, no. And so I was like, cool, let's just wrestle for a second. And she was kneeling in front of me. I grabbed her arm, put my arm. I was like, about 1.5 seconds. And she was like, don't do that. No, no, no. Ready? Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Did the exact same thing, 1.5 seconds. And I remember her then staring at me and thinking, oh, fuck. You are 1.5 seconds away anytime from putting me in a position where you can kill me. I said, yes. Now that has been true the entire time, but I have a moral compass.
Mhm.
I have consciousness.
Mhm.
I don't do this. This isn't what I do,
Mhm.
but I have the ability. And that conversation is not something that we like to talk about, which is why I have an uncivilized be dangerous, but not a danger. You're already dangerous as a man. Now, how do we make you not a danger? Go to therapy, deal with your substance abuse issues, look at your shadow, get around other men, have a mission, have a purpose, have care, tap into your heart. Don't have shame around having emotions. Don't suppress your sexual desires. Don't suppress your emotionality. In other words, don't be a bomb ready to go off just because you have bomb parts.
Takes me back to that podcast episode I was listening to back then. Yes. And it's very powerful to know that a man knows the 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 edges of his abilities and where his strength goes and what he is capable of. To me, that's a safe zone that he knows that.
You can't deny it.
Um, yeah, yeah. I last question because I
Sure.
wanted to ask you about um, all slay,
Mm,
one life,
so
keep
led.
so led all in.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you think there's a difference? What do you think is the difference for a man to live that mantra and for a woman to live that mantra in our
Mm.
Western society?
I've taught co-ed groups
Mhm.
and the result has been phenomenal. The result has been wild. How people's lives have changed as they really, really solidify. I think the process is the same, Marcella, but some of the things they have to work through are different, if that makes sense,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? A lot of the root, obviously, just because how I'm put together, and I've said, like, until you're willing to look at your sexual shadow and your sexual desires, and you as a sexual person, you will probably be living multiple lives, a public life, a private life, and a secret life. It doesn't mean that you have to show up at work to your government job on Monday and be like, I love being tied up and spanked. Like, I don't do that.
That's
Or
exactly what's happening in Washington. Yeah, I was
yeah,
there.
exactly. Or actually, if you do work for the government, be honest about it. So I think it unfolds the same, that there's different pressures on me as a man than there are as women. There are different pressures on women than there are on men. And
Mhm.
a lot of that is around wanting to have children. That's a big thing when you say, hey, my soul wants me to be a mother. That's a very different call than it is for me as a man because of time and age and biology. but truly aligning your life to the thing that is coming up through you as the desire, as the purpose, as the why you're here, I don't think cares about gender.
I think it's actually more so, as you say, be it privilege, to actually be able to afford to
For
speak your
sure.
truth, right? And yeah, it could also be the biological clock. But yeah, I was reflecting on that mantra, and I was like, yes. And also, there's moments when I cannot afford it almost.
Mhm.
And it's not because I don't want to go all in. It's
Yes,
also more so in, bigger picture thinking, or whom do I need to consider, or
for sure.
Mhm,
It's all in within the context of the fact that you live in an ecosystem,
mhm,
right? I've said to fathers specifically, "Oh, your soul wants you to move to Costa Rica, ditch your family, and start a surf lodge? You don't get to do that. You're
mhm,
still responsible to your children. You're still responsible to the people who love you." Or there are people who have joined the program and said, "Hey, I want to do this. I have a sick mother who I'm taking care of for the next 5 years. I don't get to go live," and it's not a fantasy life. But the thing I'll say, Marcella, is that there's ways to microdose everything. So I don't get to move to Costa Rica, leave my children, and open a surf lodge, right? But what if I wrote about it? What if twice a year I do go down there and surf? What if I bring my kids with me? What if we start homeschooling? Like there's ways to get a little bit of it. I'm not saying to people, "Oh, you can all just leave your jobs and start writing and have a paycheck show up, and there's no health issues, there's no familial issues, there's no relational issues." But how could you archetypally, mythologically, story-wise live out part of it as much as you're able to right now? How can you do that? So at least your soul knows that you're in relationship with it,
mhm.
right? That's
Mm.
when it gets interesting.
I'm glad I still fit in that question. I like how you put it in that context, and that I definitely take with me. Trevor, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Um, People can find you here on Substack,
Yeah.
but also, what are other ways to connect with your work and to see what you are currently building?
If you're a man, go to manuncivilized.com. If you're on want a co-ed idea, go to traverboehm.com. Or you can find me on Instagram at Traver Boehm, TraverBoehm. And my podcast, the Uncivilized Podcast, is not just for men. I've had some amazing, amazing conversations lately around soul work, around healing, around sexuality, around kink. Like these are the topics that I'm most interested in. Is what my teacher Arpita calls the wild trinity, which is sex, power dynamics, and spirituality. Like those three, that's really the conversations I want to be talking about right now.
Mm, good topics.
Yeah,
It was wonderful having you here. Um, let's continue the conversation on Substack. I will follow your work. I'm very excited this happened.
please.
So thank you
Thank
so
you again.
much.
All right. Take care.
Bye bye.